Hi, welcome back to the studio. This week I'm going to be talking about shadows. And before I paint, I want to give you a little bit of an outline as to what I think is important to think about when painting shadows. Let's look at this painting. The first thing you need to figure out when you're trying to paint a shadow is where is the light coming from? What direction and angle is it to the object that is casting the shadow? Here the light is coming straight on from the left. The next thing you have to figure out is the contour of the surface that the shadow is falling on. In this case, it's a wall. I just painted like a flat color back here. It's actually not totally flat. It's somewhat of a graded wash, but the appearance is flat. Then you have to decide on the value of that. And you can see that this is a fairly light value, although it does have a color. And it is yellow. We have to think of the color. That's the next thing. So it's the contour, the value of the surface, and we have to think of what is the shape of the object, or what that shape might be casting the shadow. And here it is, the flowers and the vase. Here you see the shadow on the persimmon is following the contour of the persimmon, and the color is more indicative of the persimmon. It is not this color back here. It's this. This has a lot of yellow and it even has green in it. This has obviously the red in it, although it's grayed. So these are the kind of issues you have to consider. Here we have a blue surface, and so my shadows reflect the fact that it is on a blue tabletop. So let's try to use some of those ideas in painting a landscape. I'll get out some colors and we're going to paint a little landscape and add some shadows. I'm going to paint a little landscape now. Put down some water, start with the sky as usual. I'm using a mixture of cobalt and ultramarine, maybe with a little Prussian blue thrown in. Bringing some of that down here, avoiding my little barn. Kind of just splashing it on. I'm thinking about the light coming from the east. Lift that up a bit, because there'll be light over here later. Perhaps put some raw sienna over here for that light. Coming back with a little opera here. Opera with the ultramarine to make my hills in the background. And I'm going to have some water here. I like that line, so I'll make it go that way. Put some water down here to kind of soften that up. put in a drop of red maybe from the hills. Bring the water back. My grass is going to be a mixture of cadmium yellow light and phthalo blue or Prussian blue. It's a little dark. Let's make it a little more yellow, please. Yeah, it's fun. I want it even more yellow than that, though. I want it bright. Bright as the sky above. Well, it's reflecting the sky above a bit, isn't it? So we'll put that in. Now we'll add some trees in the background. Painting just a medium green to dark green that I mixed. Might almost need a little more blue to it because it's back here. It flows, it goes by the river. Needs to have some different shapes to it. I'm going to bring it into my creek a little bit. And that's going to be my ground. Let's bring some of the bright up here because this is where the sun is. So over here. And of course here is going to be a bright tree. This will be my trunk, which I shouldn't have gone into that wet, but I'll come back and do that in a minute. Getting a lot of run here, which actually is kind of pretty, but I think I'm going to pull it out. Have this be some of the rows. Let's get in a little closer. I'm going to do a little bit of painting on the barn here. This is going to be the light side of it, but it's still a weathered barn. This will be the darker side of it. Not quite dark enough. Okay, here's the barn. And I'm going to, looks like I need to touch up a bit of green over here. has a bit of a road over here. Which I'll put in. I'm going to add a little more pink down here in my water. I'm going to put some water down here, and I'm going to put in some of my rose. And lastly, we have to put my tree trunk. Maybe put in another tree over here too. Let's just not make them lollipops. There's usually some other branching. Let's go into the water some, or near the water. Okay, yeah, so now the question is, what is the shadow? You can see I started painting it there. The shadow has to relate to the contour of the land, to the value and color of the land. Well, first it's got to cross the stream. So I'm going to put some more of a blue color here. And then once it crosses the stream, the shadow color has to relate, while it can be grayer, it's going to have to relate to what it's on, which in this case is the ground. So bringing in these further away trees have to be a little more blue in shadow. And there's that. There's the shadows for my trees. Now, the building is going to come down. It's more of a steep, and then across the creek a little. Again, in the grass, the shadow has to relate to the grass. It's a blue, I'm using a very blue-green to get that. And it also has to relate to the fact that the grass is, the field is not a mowed, well, it's mowed, but it's not a manicured lawn. And it can even have a little brown in it, actually. A little mud feeling there. Put some green in it. And that can be the shadow for my barn. I'll come back, I'll add a few little details here. There was a door on this side, which we can add more details to later. And that is your shadow underneath the eave. Here there's a shadow. I put in a little window. Once that dries, I can add a darker shadow on the right here because of the frame, the framing. Let's see if I can get it in now. Okay. That's, well, and then I can add shadows here. There's going to be some darkness, some change in the water. This is more of a reflection issue though here. This is not really, well, I guess in a way it's a shadow, but it's reflection of what's going on around it. So I might bring in some green. A little landscape with shadows. Why don't you try painting some shadows this week and let me know how it's going.